I just finished a pair of pants, and yes, they have pockets. Embellished pockets, that is. ChatGPT recommended that opening line. Did you like it? Hi there, welcome to my channel, Ro Can Sew. I'm Ro. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about my recent make, these pants. I'll tell you how it went, what I liked, and the detail that makes them special. So I made Simplicity 9479 View C. These are a simple basic pant designed to have a curved waistband, back darts, invisible side seam zip, angled seam pockets, and they're designed for a cropped length. The fabric recommendations are for woven types such as cotton, chambrays, linen blends, sateen, and also stretch wovens like ponte or double knit. Now I made this pattern before out of a black stretch woven, and I found them to be very comfortable to wear, and they didn't require fit adjustments outside of the hem length. So this time I wanted to make a pair out of non-stretch woven to compare the fit to the stretch woven pair of pants. So I made this pair out of a medium weight yarn dyed 100% cotton that was left over from a previous project. I'm only 5 feet tall. The pattern is not designed for someone who is 5 feet tall. So in order for me to get the cropped length that the pattern was designed for, I had to remove 4 inches of length. Now I did not make that adjustment before I cut my pattern pieces. So after I cut the pieces out, I removed 2 inches. It wasn't long enough, so I removed 2 more inches. And the reason that I did that was because I knew that I wanted the bottom hem of the pants to have a frayed edge. So I did not need enough fabric to make a traditional hem. I would have removed less than 4 inches if I needed to put, a regular hem on it. So as for the zipper insertion, I used a standard zip instead of the invisible zip. And I decided to sew my pants from the hem up to where the zipper was going to start. I back tacked it, and then I just basted the rest of the seam. And then I used my standard zip and hand basted it onto the inside on the seam allowances. And then I ran that through my machine a couple of times to secure it. And then on the outside of the pants, I just top stitched around the zipper. It's not invisible, but it does still look neat. And I will say that the standard zip functions a lot more smoothly than any of the invisible zips I have put in prior. So I'm very pleased with it. When I got done putting the zip in, I decided that I wanted to finish the edges of it. So I had some rayon bias binding, and I just bound the edges of the zipper and the seam allowances so that it looks tidy and it feels comfortable on the inside of the pants. As for the button band adjustments that I made, I decided to make an extension add on to the back of the waistband so that I could create a little flap of fabric that I could put a button on. That way it would sit behind the front waistband, which would have the button hole. Because my zipper only went up to the seam allowance, I was trying to reduce having issues with the zipper running across the waistband, and having a lot of bulk. That's the area that I was running into trouble with when I was putting in my invisible zip on some of my previous pants. So I just avoided that this time. And all I did is I just added to my back waistband pattern piece, I just added a little bit right here on the edge. I just shaped it so it would fall in line with the front waistband so that it would sit nicely behind it and not be visible. Now I didn't really add a whole lot, and I didn't realize that. I did a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then there really wasn't enough room for the button that I used. But all I did was tear that out and then reduce it to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then there was just enough flap to sit behind the front waistband, but still get a button on and be efficient and not bulky. And as for the button, I used a glass button. I just had a random glass button in my button collection, and it has beveled cuts on the top, so it kind of, when it hits the light, it kind of sparkles a little bit, and I thought that that would be really pretty. Since there's only one button on here, I thought it needed to be a good button. Now, the elements of the pants that make them special would be the embellishments. So I embellished the pocket openings, I embellished around the waistband, and I embellished the hem of the pants. I think, generally speaking, overall, I was pretty reserved with my embellishments on this item. I didn't go crazy. I started off with the embellishments on the pockets. So when I sewed the pockets, I sewed the pocket facing, which is just cotton black, to the front of the pants. But before I stitched those two together, and the pattern doesn't call for this, but because I was going to be doing a lot of decorative elements on the pocket opening, and because the front is cut on the grain, but the pocket opening is on the bias, and the bias tape I was using was on the bias, I didn't want my pocket openings to stretch out, and I wanted them to have longevity and not be flappy like I've heard people talk about. Pocket openings cut like this can stretch and warp and hang out. So I cut a piece of interfacing about a 1/2 inch wide, and I just fused that to the wrong side of the front pattern pieces, exactly on top of where the stitch line would be for sewing on the pocket facing. So I put the interfacing on first, I sewed the pocket facing on, I stitched that, I clipped it, I understitched it, turned it, and then I did my embellishments. So I had some 2-inch wide bias binding in the same fabric as the pants, and I folded that 2-inch bias binding in half, and I lined up the folded edge of the bias binding with the curved edge of the pocket. I pinned that in place, and I took that to my machine and I just stitched it. Once I had that bias initially secured to the front pattern piece, I was then able to go back and do all of the decorative elements. In this case, I just used black yarn that I had lying around. I inherited it from someone else's project leftovers, just standard black yarn. I used that to trim the outside edge of the pocket opening. I hand basted the yarn along the opening, and then I took it to my machine and I stitched it with that triple back and forth zigzag stitch to really lock it in place. And then I stitched another line of yarn, and I did the same thing. I hand basted that and stitched that in place. And then I did a decorative stitch element, whatever the honeycomb stitch is called. I don't know the name of the stitch designs, but whatever that honeycomb-esque stitch is, I did that on the widest setting next. And then I did another row of hand basting yarn and then zigzagging that one in place very well. So there's three rows of yarn that are spaced out. One section has the decorative stitching in it. And once I was sure to have had enough zigzag stitching along that outermost row of yarn, I frayed all of the remaining bias tape. Now I've frayed it and I have left it, and I'm not sure if I'll go back and trim it or not. I haven't decided at this point, but that's what I did with the pockets. Now in my head, I was thinking that when I got to the waistband, that I would do the same thing, that I would mirror these elements here. As I was looking at the pants, it seemed like this was a lot happening in the pocket area. So when I laid the yarn around the waistband just to see what it looked like, I really liked the impact of just a simple black line outlining the waistband. So that's what I ended up doing. And I did the same thing that I did for the pocket openings. I just hand basted the yarn where I wanted it. In this case, I stitched on the waistband, and the waistband facing on the inside, I just trimmed that down and tucked it up as if I were preparing to slip stitch it in place, but instead I just tacked it with glue, and then on the front of the pants, I lined the yarn up right over the crease where the waistband and the pants meet, right in that, like where you would stitch in the ditch. That's pretty much where I placed my yarn. and hand basted that in place, and then I zigzagged that down. And the benefit of that was that it not only secured the yarn to the waistband and really locked it in place, but it also caught the facing on the inside and ended up finishing that on the inside. So it looks really pretty on the inside, and it tacked down the waistband facing along with securing the yarn, and I was really pleased with the results on that. And then the hem, again, I removed the 4 inches, so I had a raw edge on the bottom of my pants. And what I did was I just kind of measured up from that raw edge and determined how wide I wanted my faux band to be. And I marked that, and then I ran that through my machine and did a guiding stitch. And then what I did after that was I hand basted the yarn. Nope, take that back. Then what I did was I took more bias binding and I folded an edge of the bias binding down, and I lined the folded edge up with the guiding stitch that I sewed. And I put that around the opening of the pants, and I secured it at one side and finished it like you would bias binding normally anyway. And then where the seam was for the binding and the pants, I hand basted a row of yarn, zigzagged that down just to make sure everything was all locked in place. And I did another row of just stitching to further secure the bias binding to the pant leg. Then I did a decorative stitch. I did the same decorative stitch that I did on the pocket openings, the same width, the same pattern design. And then below that, I did another row of yarn, but in this instance, I stacked. I doubled up the yarn so that I have a wider black line at the base of what I'm calling the band, just to make it a little more obvious. It's just a little bit darker and thicker, and I just thought that that looked better at the bottom of the pants. And it also helped to make sure that when I went to fray the bottom edge, it would just further lock the fray in place. And yeah, I think that's everything. And I have pants. I really like this pant pattern because for me, it didn't require a lot of fit adjustments. In fact, I didn't do any fit adjustments outside of shortening the length. They're very comfortable to wear. I would like to make them again at some point and make full length pants this time that go all the way down to the floor, with or without a cuff, I don't know. But I do like this pattern. It's just a very simple, basic pant pattern. I'm sure the legs could be adjusted wider or narrower. The length can obviously go up and down. Probably could even make shorts out of them. It would be a very quick sew, especially if you weren't embellishing them. And I don't have anything bad to say about the pattern. I think the fit works for me. I think the fit works well. I will say that when I started this project, I had planned on making the jacket to go with the pants, just like I did in the black pair that I made. I thought if I had enough of this fabric left over, that maybe I would make the jacket and I would trim, around the neckline, the sleeve opening, down the front button band, and around the bottom of the jacket. But I'm looking at the pants now, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I made the jacket to match it like a set and did the embellishments, if that would be too much. Would that be too overwhelming as a set? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that I should make the jacket to go with it next or move on to something else? Let me know in the comments what you think about that. I'll show you some pictures of me wearing these pants. I don't have a lot to wear with them yet, but I did style them with, I use the word style loosely. I am wearing them with plain shirts, a white Agostina boxy top and a black Chelsea raglan tee. And the black Chelsea raglan tee is designed to just be a straight hem at the bottom. I added some elastic to that to give it a faux tucked in look. But I'm wondering how these pants would work with, you know, maybe more like a button front shirt, a collared button front shirt of some nature. I have a few options in my pattern collection. I'm not looking to purchase anything currently. I'm only in the position to be able to work within my existing fabric and pattern collections. But I do have a few button-up patterns. I do have some black rayon challis, and I do have some black cotton poplin. So I could make a shirt next that maybe could work with the pants. Let me know if you think that I should make the jacket to go with it, if I should make a different top to go with it, or if I should move on to a different project entirely. And then in addition to that, what did you think about my pants? How do you think I did? Do you think they look well? Have you embellished pants before yourself? Would you embellish them? Don't tell me if you don't like it though. Just keep that to yourself, please. Nice, friendly comments only. Well, I think that's it for now. So thanks so much for watching the video. Until next time, take care. Bye.